Okay, so introducing our guest, Debra Franses, British artist and educator, founder and CEO of Artbag and Mini Monets, featured in Harper's Bazaar, the New York Times, and her famous resin bags are on show not only in the UK, but New York, Dubai, Hong Kong, Palm Beach, the list goes on.
I was spinning left, right and centre, and I remember another time I was flown out to Bologna by Fendi. He thought, oh, I've got this young girl here, I'm going to show her the ropes, tell her what to do. And they'd offered me 2.5%, so I turned it down.
Quite frankly, it seems like, had you been a guy at that time, you probably would have been the chairman of one of those companies or something by now. What was that epiphany and where did that lead you to?
I just remember being completely flooded with tears and just flooded with a sense of light around me.
Were you taking any drugs?
No. Maybe there was a bit of weed.
Are they going to take me seriously, or I don't have the credentials that somebody else have?
I never felt I had imposter syndrome. I was so confident with my own abilities and my own judgment. Do what you do and do it well, and your audience will find you.
Okay, so introducing our guest, Debra Franses, British artist and educator, founder and CEO of Artbag and Mini Monets, featured in Harper's Bazaar, the New York Times, and her famous resin bags are on show not only in the UK, but New York, Dubai, Hong Kong, Palm Beach, the list goes on.
Berlin.
Yeah. Wow, Debra.
Hamburg. Yeah, I know.
So
I get
Debra,
around.
Yes, and that's exactly what we want to try and unpick some of that story with you today. So before I kind of get into the part of Artbag,
Yes.
let's unpack another bag, which is...
I like what you did.
Do you like why I did that? Which is the kind of formative years of Debra. Yeah. What was Debra like when she was little?
Precocious. Yeah, bit of a show-off. Very motivated. Not a wallflower by any means. Loved dressing up. Loved nothing more than a dressing up party. Loved raising money for charity. Sponsored this, sponsored that. Threw garden parties in my neighbourhood to raise money for the NSPCC.
Oh, wow. So an entrepreneurial spirit from the
God,
start.
yes.
What I'm getting from this is that budding artist, but also not just artist, somebody who wanted to have that shown and shared, was definitely a young Debra.
I wanted recognition.
I wanted to be
I did.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so where did that kind of part of feeling that kind of that you've almost, as a young child, to get that, it's almost like the pinnacle of what you could achieve in kind of achieving some kind of stardom on the art that you were producing.
But I think I was quite normal until my sister arrived. And then obviously it was all about, hey, I need some attention. So
that was the way you got attention.
I think so, yeah. Yeah, it was just trying to be as sparkly as I possibly could.
And what did you then go on to study? And, when you were thinking about actually your career, what did you go into from there?
Well, my first degree was economics, politics and philosophy. Obviously, Alexander Lenin was a big hero of mine. And I went to Manchester University, which I have to be honest, I loved my course. I loved the social anthropology part of it. And the bit that I loved the most about that was understanding that you could have an economy without cash. And that sort of got me into my first thought about the Poltak, which was in Papua New Guinea, where they have an exchange economy. And I loved that. I thought that was the most fascinating part of my degree. Then there was a whole lot of personal stuff that went on, and I ended up going off to Rome. I took an ad in a paper that said, "Earn, learn and travel. Are you free to be in Rome this Christmas?" And I remember my interview, I had to try and sell a pen to this panel of people. And there was no question in my mind whether I was going to get the job. I'd already got the job when I walked in. That was my attitude. I just thought I was somebody. I always thought I was somebody. And I really don't know why. But I think it's something to do with the way my mum just thought I was amazing. So I thought, well, if mum thinks I'm amazing, I must be amazing.
Well, you are amazing. So you took this job in Rome.
Yes.
And what was it, like a kind of a stint for a couple of months or?
Well, I ended up traveling all around Italy and then all around Spain. And then I went to Ibiza. And you just wouldn't imagine what this job was. It was door-to-door sales of a multi-purpose miracle cleaner. Well, you had to make it miracle, because obviously we all know you have to give everything a good scrub to get it properly clean. But it was one of those products that you just added a little bit of water, a little bit of product, rest water, and you walked around with a spray bottle and you would just go into the different businesses and do a demonstration. And for me, obviously, I love an audience. So the more people in the shop, the better. So I would kind of give it a little spray, kind of give it a little clean spot. And I'd just say, look how dirty you are. Look how clean my product makes you.
Yeah. I would have brought that off you for sure, Deborah. And so
just to get me out the door.
Yes. So I know that you kind of did this little stint in Rome, and then did you say you kind of went into, was it banking, finance?
No, I worked for
publishing.
Well, I picked up a few languages along the way, and obviously I was good at selling. So I first started working for Digital Music Express when I came back to the UK, and that was like it was a competitor for MTV, and I was like a business salesperson, going to the cable industry and the satellite industry, using my languages, because I've got the French from school, then the Italian and Spanish. That was largely because my dad was an international salesperson. And so I always used to hear him. He worked from home and he had this little office at home. And on the door there was, "Would the last businessman leaving the country please switch off the light?" And so there was this, I don't know, there was always this kind of like little entrepreneurial thing going on at home.
Yeah.
And I was always aware that I was going to go out into the world and I was going to, try and make my living. My parents had got divorced and, there was no trust fund, put it that way.
Yeah.
It was, if I wanted to get my own place, I needed to make money to get out there.
So would you say that you kind of understood that for you to get what you wanted out of life, that grafting and really kind of getting stuck in there was part and parcel of it? Not having to go, okay, well, I want to only run after this career, but actually,
I had no clue.
I had
no clue.
Just whatever I need to do to make sure that I can pay my rent, do the things that I want to do. That's the direction I'm going to go in.
Yeah, and I was always attracted to what was the hot industry. So when I came back from Italy and I was sort of like, what shall I do, Dad? Because he was like kind of my sounding board. And he said, well, go into some kind of technology, go into something to do with the internet. That seems to be the growing industry right now.
Yeah.
So I started with the cable, and then after the cable, I went to work for this absolutely wacky entrepreneur called Dan Wagner, who'd set up this company called Made. And we were based in Leicester Square, first floor, above where McDonald's now is. And there was an all-bar one there as well. And every lunchtime we were down having like Chinatown, and I would drive all over the country. It was insane. And I thought it was completely and utterly normal. And I was just out there. I was selling subscriptions, a very expensive subscription service for his online market research company. And I would drive to Wales, come back through Birmingham, and then maybe have a meeting down in Reading before coming back home. And I had a company car, and I was a hustler. I was just out there. and within 6 months, I won their salesperson award. And I was like, yeah, I love this. I absolutely love this. And then after that, I decided, it sort of started getting a bit. Well, actually, it got quite interesting because we went from a modem service to an internet service, and that was the very beginning.
There on the transition.
Yeah, I was just there on that crossover, and from there, I sort of jumped into a job at Reuters. And when I first started, they were sort of putting out news, a news alert, basically saying we will not we will not go and use the internet.
No way.
No, it's going to stay a modem service. You know, the whole Reuters technology that was in the trading floors. And I was actually on Reuters Media. And my great claim to fame there was I had to get the price of Reuters photos up in the UK in line with Europe. And it was 5 times more expensive, the Reuters news feed in Europe. And the press in the UK had like kind of a grip on all the providers because they were the big boys, especially News International. And I sort of, as I was keen on my job, and I sort of minced into the boardroom, and I had all the managing editors of all the newspapers, The Sun, the managing editor of News of the World, of The Times, and all the big guys were basically in the room. And I sort of said, I'm ever so sorry, but Reuters is now going to be putting up our prices in line with Europe. At this point, they announced through the newswire that they were quitting with Reuters and that they were going to go with Associated Press. And I just thought it was all a bit of a game, really. So I then had the chairman of Reuters on the phone to me the next day. What's this going on here with News International? And I said, well, I think we can get them, but I think we're going to have to do it as a 2-phased or a 3-phased kind of price rise over 5 years, and we'll get them up to the right price. And for me, everything was in a negotiation. There was nobody could say no to me because no wasn't really an option. There was always another way. And I think that's part of my creativity is like, you never feel like you're stuffed in a corner.
To just unpick that a little bit, right? So obviously, like, we've seen so much change. I mean, I've personally seen so much change in the workplace, especially as a female, in the last 5 or 10 years. This is going back when it was very male-dominated.
Oh, yeah.
There wasn't really much of a conversation going on about women in the workplace. Yeah. And so for you to not already have a platform there to kind of go, hey, you know, there's already a change going on, you just actually waltzed in there, not thinking I'm a female, they're not going to take me seriously. What was your mindset to kind of go, did you ever think, are they going to take me seriously? Or I don't have the credentials that somebody else have? Or did that not even turn up for you?
It didn't turn up. I never felt I had imposter syndrome. I was like so confident with my own abilities and my own judgment, maybe foolishly. Yeah, maybe foolishly. But nothing at that point had come to tell me that I was wrong.
That's amazing.
That's
amazing to walk in without having this kind of packaged up feeling of, oh, hang on a second, do I know everything? Are they going to take me seriously? Do I have enough years of experience to go and speak to the chairman? A lot of the times when you kind of find yourself in that situation, I have found myself in that situation where I've had to go and put in my last role. So I was a little bit like you, where if I had an idea, I just needed to get it out, right? So I had this idea, which was about the coffee market. It was growing year on year by 9%. We're doing no money in it, nothing in it. So I literally just sent an email to my CEO, and then I did get in trouble with it, but then I got asked to then lead it. But in that moment that I was writing it, I was going, oh, hang on a second, can I send it? No, I can't send it. I had this little struggle, but then the greater good of me started to think, but we're missing out on all this, like, this increase that's going on and the movement in the market. So I just felt like I had to do the right thing. What was your mindset when you were like, hey, we need to do this? How did you arrive to A, saying, okay, this is what we need to do, and B, going, I've got a seat at the table to say this? Was there any thinking behind that?
Yeah, I thought, this isn't fair. You guys think that you can bully everybody, all these photographers that are out there risking their lives in the field. And now we're going digital as well. And so we've had to invest in loads more camera equipment. Our guys can be out there. They can beam their photos up to the satellite, straight down to the news feed within an nth of a second of this happening to make your publications sing and sell off the shelves so that you can sell advertising. and everyone can have big fat checks.
So your kind of almost superpower there was actually the right thing to do. Like,
Yeah.
I need to talk and stand up for
Yeah.
what's happening here. I don't think it's fair.
Yeah.
And so when you're coming from it from that angle, there wasn't any of thinking about yourself. I think once I listened to a talk by somebody who was talking about standing up in front of everyone and how do you get rid of the nerves. And he said, well, because when I stand up, I'm actually doing it because I'm thinking about the value and the service that I'm doing for the people. I'm not going, I'm standing up here and I'm talking and now I'm really nervous because I'm thinking what they're thinking, because all I'm thinking about is that I need to get this across because these people need to hear it.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really powerful point to kind of even think about if there's something that you want to do, like whether it's work, whether it's within a relationship, wherever it is that you want to go do that. If the greater good feels bigger than yourself, you kind of tap into this.
Yeah. Well, it's not
power.
about you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. So so Debra.
Well, it's the fear, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's what people say. The only thing that holds people back is the fear. So if you listen to too much news, and if you like take all those things, all the negative things seriously, you are full of fear. And most politics. Sorry to be banging on about politics here.
Yeah.
But most politics is about leading through putting people in a state of fear so that they then capitulate and do what you tell them to do.
Totally.
But as an artist, you are an absolute rule breaker. That is the artist's way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, now you've actually just put that also into that encapsulation of being an artist, is that by default you're a rule breaker.
Yeah.
So you were never meant to colour in the lines, were you?
No. I was meant to draw my own lines. Yeah, and then splash things around. As
a Jackson Pollock it. Okay. So there's Debra walking in, saying we need to do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
What happened from there? Did you feel like, okay, now I want to grow in this? Because as a woman in that time, I can't imagine there were that many other women.
Oh, there is a story there. Because when I was brought into Reuters, the lovely man, I forget his name now, that brought me in, had said, we're going to make you media manager. So that's the plan. Within 6 months, I'm leaving. You're going to be the media manager. And so that appealed to me because I was like, yeah, here I am, a woman in a very top-down male role company. And then he left and they brought in this guy from, the network, basically. He'd come in from Singapore, so he was a sort of expat, and they were trying to shuffle him around and give him a job. And then, so he took my boss's job. I remained as an account manager or director, whatever they wanted to call me. It was sort of a bit insulting. And then he brought in this really buffoony guy, also who had a very plummy voice, who'd come in from the Daily Mail. And they were like in cahoots, these two. And they would kind of waft around in their suits and like kind of all the time. And I was like, I can't stand this. So I got onto my headhunter, who'd got me the job in the first place. And I said, I've got to get out of here. I said, I can't stand this place. Hit the glass ceiling, got a big bump on my head here. Can you get me an interview somewhere else? So he then got me an interview at the Financial Times. They'd just set up ftyourmoney.com, which was part of ft.com, but it was the kind of the financial part. And it had this whole financial services bit to it. But the job itself sounded quite interesting. It was director of partnerships, promotions, advertising and sponsorship.
Is there anything else left?
God, yeah, tea.
Was it all of it?
Yeah. So, it was a startup role. It was very exciting. And I would get what I needed to get done by literally sitting on the corner of people's desks and saying, right, you need to do this now. And, really kind of press ganging people into doing what I needed to do because I had this vision of what needed to be done. And then it started growing and growing. And I went to my boss and I said, look, I think I need an assistant. And you know what he did? Josh Bottomley, if you're out there. Victoria Bottomley's son. She was a politician as well.
Okay, I don't know who Victoria really Bottomley is, but I'm going to Google all these people afterwards.
Yeah, so Josh, he was ex-McKinsey.
Okay.
Very, very straight. Yeah, and there were some great people in that company. But again, I was one of the only females. And he said, actually, we're going to turn your job into 2 jobs. And we've got somebody in who is going to do sales. And at this point, I thought, wow. So I came up with a proposal for a women's FT.com. So that was my idea, that we should do a women's or even a women's paper. And so I had meetings with how to spend it and various meetings. And eventually they decided I could get a job selling advertising on the newspaper. So I said, no, thank you very much. And I took a nice payout and left. At that point, I went to beme.com as the commercial director. But it was as the internet was disintegrating. Boo.com had just burst and the whole thing was really trickling down. So, I ended up taking a bit of time out, went to go and make some sculpture in a quarry down in...
So this is when at that time, I mean, quite frankly, it seems like had you been a guy at that time, you probably would have been the chairman of one of those companies or something by now. But those roadblocks started coming in.
Yeah.
And at that time, there wasn't much you could do. Either you kind of suck it up.
It was like Squid Game. All the women were out there on that glass roof and they were all getting completely whacked off.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
With that, what's that one where the girl's singing and she turns around every single time. But
I've never been a feminist. I never identified myself as a feminist at all. Because I thought because I did politics at university and I had Ursula Vogel and she was a female, she was a female lecturer in women's politics. And she had a cigar, she had big plants in her room, she was really fabulous. And I always thought by even just saying feminism, you're saying that there's a difference. Yeah. And plus the feminists had this terrible, terrible image of burn the bra, hang out at Greenham Common. And it was just, I found it totally and utterly degrading. I thought, well, you can be a woman, you can be feminine, but it doesn't mean you have to be a feminist. And you don't have to be weak and just looking for a husband and making babies either.
Yeah. I mean, I do get actually that school of thought. And I think the way that you've approached it, what I've interpreted it as, is I'm just going to go for it. Because, even for myself, if I kind of relate back, can I say that I didn't have as many opportunities being somebody from an ethnic minority and being a woman? Now, there's probably a lot of things that came up, but I just chose to just kind of look in a direction and kind of just run in that direction.
Yeah.
Because for me, if I allowed those things to become a thing, it would almost stop me from trying to go further with what I wanted to do. So, I'd kind of have like what the ultimate thing of where I want to go with the job or whatever it is. And I didn't want to kind of look at the fact that I might be up against this and that's why I didn't get it, because I think psychologically it would just bring me further and further down. So I kind of think I can kind of understand what you're saying there of actually what you done was I'm just going to run out there and go in a direction and make something happen out of it. Almost like the way you said, I didn't have a plan. And when you don't have a plan, you kind of see your North Star and you just go in that direction and things come.
Yeah.
And it might be that someone's sexist, someone's, racist in the workplace, somebody's, now you've had a baby. Now, it's like literally...
It's a process of elimination.
Yeah.
It's like you may not know what you want to do, but as you go through, you figure out what you don't want to do.
Exactly. And who you don't want to work with as well. That comes up as well. And actually, as you grow in experience and confidence, you start to go, well, actually, that's not something that I want. So even though that maybe you left that because of, where you should have got that promotion and should have been given an assistant, you kind of like look back and go, that's actually not what I want. I don't actually want to be there. So it those no's or those challenges that come in the way, the little mountains and the bumps, start to take you on the road that you do want to go on. So tell me about how, this is like super career woman, city kind of, fast-paced life. How did you go from that to go, I'm going to pursue a direction in art, like how I'm going to pursue a career in art?
I think because there were a few things that happened. First of all, when I was from about the age of 6, I thought I was going to be an international artist. I wanted to have galleries all over the world. I wanted to travel, and I wanted to not just be a tourist. I wanted to immerse myself culturally in and be a global citizen. My dad always said he was a global citizen. I thought, well, that sounds quite good.
I like the sound of that, global citizen.
Well, being Jewish as well, I always felt a bit like a gypsy and a bit of an outcast because I was at a school where there weren't many Jews. In fact, I think my headmaster was actually racist. There were a lot of swastika graffitis on the wall.
Goodness.
There were skinheads at the end of the field. It was a little bit oppressive. And so I used to go and retreat into the art block, and I'd do my art there. And it was like my sanctuary. And so I always had that as my place. I always, nourished my soul, as it were.
Oh, I love that.
Through the art.
We're all about nourishing your soul.
I danced. I played the piano. I tried all sorts of other instruments, but I really liked the piano. And, I did my art. And I swam. Yeah. So they're quite solitary things. And I think that also helps develop your sense of self from an early age, is doing these solitary things. And you just kind of get to know who you are and feel comfortable about it.
I think that probably was a lot of the reason why you were able to go into those boardrooms and say what you did say or propose what you were going to propose, because you were able to kind of go, I can go away and think about something. I don't need to have a whole team meeting to work out what's happening. I'm quite capable of coming up with a creative idea myself, and you kind of grow in that.
I journaled a lot.
Yeah.
I journaled. When I was doing my door-to-door sales in Italy, it was difficult. My parents had divorced. My mum was mentally not well at the time and had been put into a hospital. It was a very difficult time. So I did a lot of journaling, and I would sit down on a park bench and, if things hadn't gone my way, if a door had been slammed in my face, as it were, I would journal about it, and I would just find my own philosophical way of rationalising what was going on. That, and I used to love playing Tetris. I would find a bar and go and play Tetris, or go and buy a pair of shoes. One of those things, or maybe go to the hairdressers. Yeah, those were my things that I did. But it was the kind of the journaling, the art, and I started to do that.
And that's quite interesting because I think
again
the time period that we're living in now with, Instagram and, the people that you'll listen to a lot of people telling you about journaling, about ways to kind of, start your morning ritual, all those things that have really kind of grown, and people are talking about that more so. But at that time, for you to find that yourself.
They're industries.
Yeah.
You can buy a special journal. You can go on courses for journaling. There are companies that create journals with special sections in them, and you can take, it's consumerism. And consumerism has got hold of every little thing that we've ever had that's been any good in life and has made an industry out of it or a business out of it.
Yeah. Well, definitely everything that I think of that I'm doing now. Yes, when you done it when you were younger, you didn't quite know that this was a cool thing to do.
No.
You know, you'd just be doing it. But what I wanted to kind of bring it back to was that bit that you left this kind of amazing career that was kind of starting to flourish, and you were really kind of, especially kind of in that time where the kind of .com and everything was blowing up, and you decided to take a break. And you had your kind of what I call you'll feel it in your soul moment.
My epiphany.
Your epiphany.
Yeah.
What was that epiphany, and where did that lead you to?
My first epiphany was I'd just turned 30 and I went on a yoga retreat in India. Didn't know anybody. And I remember we had this, like, we were in Bondula. It was a very small group of people with a gorgeous yoga instructor. Yeah, did help. But it was a group of women with this, like, Adonis kind of male guy. And I was like, wow, this is great. And the first time I had that epiphany, so yoga really was another thing that's really, really helped me to just kind of mull on things. And we did this, like, morning meditation, evening meditation, lots of different yogas during the day. We were just eating vegan food before veganism was really a thing either. You know, we are talking about 25 years ago now. Yeah.
Ahead of the curve.
Oh, always.
And
well, my mum was very ahead of the curve, to be honest. She was into health food and gluten-free and all of this stuff.
I didn't even know that gluten-free was a thing.
Way before it came a thing, before it became 2 letters.
And so you went on this yoga retreat, you had an epiphany.
Yeah.
Right? And that was to do what?
Well, it was a bit like an alignment. It was like everything I remember the moon was up. I could hear the monkeys jabberwalking. I could hear the birds. I could see the stars. And I just remember being completely flooded with tears and just flooded with a sense of light around me.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was like suddenly everything just fell into place. It was really strange. All my hurts and all my upsets from the past. And I came back from that trip.
Were you taking any drugs?
No. Maybe there was a bit of weed. Maybe a little bit, but no. I think it was mainly mangoes and cashews.
Okay.
Yeah. A lot of rice and onion bhaji. Yeah.
Okay, that does it. It's the onion bhaji.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. It is.
Yeah, it's very sattvic, isn't it? Yeah.
So you... And what was this epiphany? Was it that you are going to go and change your career? Was it that you need to go and have more time apart? What was the kind of thing that came to you?
That I had everything that I needed within me.
Wow.
Yeah. It was such a pure moment. It was like this moment of, like, complete gratitude. And then, I came back from that trip, met my first husband, who we're now not together, but we have a lovely son together, and we are really good friends. And we travelled a lot. And he encouraged me to go to art school, actually, and he carried on working and allowed me that time and the space to go and do that. But the real kind of that moment, that kind of the push, came when I was doing my stone carving down in Portland, and it was September the 11th. And we all know what happened on that day. I got this phone call from my dad in the quarry, and he said, "It's Armageddon."
Gosh.
He said, "The world is, I don't know what's going to happen." And I just stayed in that quarry from noon till dusk, hitting my Portland stone and finally revealing this figure in the stone. I mean, Michelangelo always said that the figure is in the stone, and it is the artist's job to find God's creation within the stone, which is why he always left certain parts of the marble there and just revealed part of the figure out of the stone.
And did you feel that, like, when you were in that moment, that you're just overcome with
connection?
Just being in, and just almost like you probably didn't even feel the time or space
nothing.
Or I'm going to do this next.
There was no I. There was actually no I. There was just an energy. Yeah, it was a very sort of egoless time. And I remember the people that were running the quarry coming down and saying, you really should go to art school. You've got something. You should go to art school.
And you came back and then applied?
Yeah, I put all some work together in a folder. I had my severance money from the Financial Times, and I think the courses were already starting. And I remember going down to City and Guilds because I thought, well, that's a private one. I might be able to get in there because, there's money and money talks. And so I went down there and he gave me a place on the course, which was fantastic. I loved it.
Was that Central
Kennington? No, that's Kennington. City and Guilds. And I loved it there because they did have stone carving, they had glass fusing, they had printing, they had all the kind of crafts. City and Guilds, when you do a City and Guilds, craftsmanship. So it was the value was in the absolute beautiful home handmade object. And a lot of the conceptual work I found so tatty. I like to see well-made things.
And when you went into that, did you feel that you needed to have an end game, or what am I going to do with this? Or was it a matter of putting yourself,
this was therapy.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was therapy. Yeah, it was my art therapy. So I went and did the course. And I'd actually, in the build up to that, I'd lost. So there's always three things. I always like to say that, like a slot machine, when you get the third strawberry in the row, you kind of hit the jackpot. So the 9/11 was like the third strawberry. And the first two things were very, very tragically, I'd lost two very close friends within 6 months of each other. Both, they took their lives around the age of 30, and they were both on Prozac.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then 9/11
And I didn't really understand mental health issues. I'd known my mum had some, but that was mum, and
and I don't think it was spoken
a peer
about.
Group,
yeah.
And it wasn't a peer group. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so going through something like that in terms of two of your best friends, trying to even make sense. Yeah, trying to even make sense of it.
Because I was so positive. I was such a positive person, and I was such a can-do person, and I just couldn't understand how life could have failed them so much, or their families, or their work, or their expectations, or their relationships could have failed them so much that they could have taken such a,
What do you think that did in terms of young Debra kind of going through life? You've had having to change where you're at because the environment that you're in is not really responding to the hard work that you're putting in, how brilliant you are at that job. So you're like, right, I'm going to go back to the drawing board, go to India. You then kind of go, right, I'm going to start studying, a completely going back into something, especially kind of at the age of...
I didn't see it as going back. I saw it as going forward.
Wow. Because a lot of people, once you kind of, like when I think back to my mentality, it took me till 35 to give myself permission to say, right, forget it. I'm trying not to swear on the podcast. I'm sure it's going to come out somewhere. But to just actually say, I don't care. I don't give a damn. I'm just going to do it anyway. But when I was 30, I was so obsessed with, oh my God, I've hit 30, all the things that I needed to have got done, to then go, I'm going to go study something, and I'd have no game plan, right? And I'm sure a lot of people around you are like, like bought their house, now doing this and doing that on the ladder, and they're going, what you're going and studying now in your early 30s. What was your mindset in terms of not giving a damn about what other people thought?
Well, having lost 2 friends from them obviously feeling trapped, I just thought, I can't afford not to do this.
That's so interesting.
As opposed to, I can't afford to do this.
That is so interesting. Because I do think that when you look at something and you're in that scenario, so when I went through my real transformation stage, I looked at the next 10 years and went, my God, I can't afford not to do this.
Same.
But I had
that's
to
your
arrive
moment,
at that.
isn't it?
Yeah, that's your moment. That's almost like the feel it in your soul.
It's your tipping point.
It is. It is your tipping point.
Yeah.
And did you come up against much barrier, or kind of did you feel any type of pressure that can I do this, or did you feel like, I mean, did you have to speak to your husband? Is this, and
well, he encouraged the first one, and then when I said, actually, I'm kind of getting into this now. I want to go and do a degree, because that was a foundation. I want to go and do a degree in this. He was like, really? I was like, yeah. I said, well, let's just see. Let me put my portfolio together. Let me just take it around to a couple of places. My first place was the Slade, because I thought I wanted a more academic, heavyweight place at the Slade. And Philida Barlow, who just passed away last week, she was head of sculpture there, and I was really, really keen to get in there. But I don't know, they didn't like my portfolio. So then I took it round to St. Martin's. And the moment I walked through the door there, I was like, oh my goodness, of course I didn't go to the other place. This is my place.
Arrived. I'm home.
This is my place, yeah. Full of all these little trendy people, fashion students, lots of Japanese people dressed as manga dollies. And
oh my God, it was just such a happening
so
place.
fabulous. And it's in Soho, and with all the coffee bars around there and the clubs. And I mean, what's not to love, really? It was so vibrant. Walked in, had my interview. They said to me, any more questions? And I just said, just one other question. I said, will you be offering me a place?
That sounds like Debra.
Yeah.
Just ask off the bat. Don't be around the bush.
Well, the most stupid question to ask is the one you don't ask.
Exactly.
And I was always taught to ask for the order.
Do you know what? That is such good kind of advice, even to kind of give to your kids, right? Just ask. Because I don't think I realised that I could ask until, like, I asked for a couple of things once and I got it. And I was like, wait, hang on a second. I can just ask and you could just get it like that.
Yes.
Because no one quite tells you that, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, so tell me, so you asked the question and what was the response?
And they all kind of looked at each other because it was a panel. And they smiled at me. They
Not
smiled
ready
at
for
me.
your question.
No, they smiled at me like, what chutzpah has this one got? Maybe she'll do good here. Because you have to have a lot of chutzpah to be an artist. Because, boy, it's tough.
Yeah.
It's really tough. I mean, I remember my husband at the time said, 99% of those people that go through that course will end up flipping burgers or doing something completely different, and they'll never become name and lights or anything like that. Which one are you going to be? And so he kind of like set me this task. And he went to Oxford. He was a bright man. And I think he was always challenging me. And we had a very sparring kind of relationship. He was a bit resentful, I must say, about me going off and doing exactly what I wanted to do and making such a wonderful opportunity out of it, because there wasn't one moment that I wasted of those 3 years. And that is something that I would like to put out there. Never think that because you didn't do what you wanted to do the first time, you can't go back and do it again. The only time you can't go back and do it again is when you're in a box under the ground. Yeah.
So true.
But yeah, until then,
I actually think when you do go back and do it again, you do not waste a moment.
It's so intentional.
You don't waste one iota of what you're doing. Like if I can compare, let's say when you go to university like I did, when you just come straight out of college, you go to university, you go out lots, you do all that stuff, but the kind of appreciation that you have for something when you come back to something, when you're almost like given this second chance or this it feels like such a privilege that you just do not waste 1 second of it.
Yeah.
100%.
And
so you came out of there and you obviously went to Central St. Martin's, you done your degree.
Yes.
And then when you came out of there, did you have this pressure of how did you turn that into going, okay, I'm turning this into my career path? And that kind of moment of, did you work that out? Because art is so...
It started like the moment I got a place on that degree. It wasn't a question of when I get out of there. You have to come out. You have to fly out of those places, because if you're not flying out of there, you'll never get, And because I'd had this like being wound up the whole time by the husband, make
worked.
something of this. It really worked, because I'd already had an installation in Harvey Nichols, another one in Selfridges. I'd been in the Evening Standard magazine. I've been in the Telegraph. I've won an award for Student of the Year, and I'd won this printing award, and I created wallpaper and a fabric range. I set up a company called Couturious.
Whilst you were actually studying?
Well, yeah, that was part of it. I'd set up, I had my first website because obviously I'd been in the internet world, and I knew that I could actually tell my own story to the world if anyone interested, but at least it would be there documented as I've got a website, you can find me. I had a very commercial, and they hated that.
Yeah.
Oh, St. Martin's did not like that at all. They said, oh, you're just like Julian Opie. He's far too commercial. I thought, well, you're here teaching and nobody knows who you are. And Julian Opie is multimillionaire international artist. I know which one I want to be.
I think what's really clear about that was like there's no shame, right?
No, there's no shame.
And I think that comes from even from the door knocking and what's coming through is there's never a time that you're like, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to go and knock on someone's door you were like, tell me what it is that I need to do and I'll get it done. And if you're not going to tell me, I'll figure out what it is that I'm going to do. But, like I said, there is absolutely that getting to that realization that there is no shame in doing whatever you need to do to make something kind of come to life takes away all the kind of mucking around, messing around and kind of almost like not getting to the point of what you want to do.
Yeah.
Whereas if you would have come in there and gone, right, I'm just here let's do my art and listen to my teachers, you would have come out of there going, I don't know what to do with this now. I don't quite know what to do with this.
Who am I?
Which is actually what a lot of...
Who am I?
Yeah, which is a lot of what comes out of...
Yeah.
I mean, I studied fashion and I did actually come out going, I don't know what I want to do with this now. Because I was just like, one day I do this.
You were a puppet from some tutor.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, in their vision.
So there you are. You've kind of created almost like this business during your degree where you are being featured and there is a commercial aspect to it. You come out of that and then... what do you do after that? Because I've got here that I remember you went through quite a kind of traumatic experience with your house.
Yeah, we were living in Hampstead and I set up Couturious. It was being run from the living room.
Yeah, where the wallpaper prints.
Yeah, and again, I was getting quite a lot of traction and wallpaper was very much, in 2005, it was the very hot thing to be involved in. And I remember living Etc. magazine. It was like, and the magazine called Wallpaper as well.
Yeah, there was, yeah.
Wallpaper was very, very happening. And I felt like I was on the cutting edge there. And there were all these people kind of giving me advice and coming, wanting to be my agent here and giving me advice. And I was spinning left, right and centre. And I remember another time I was flown out to Bologna by Fendi, who wanted to license one of my chandelier designs.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the guy that was...
Debra.
Yeah.
I just need to stop. Like, oh
Yeah.
my goodness.
I turned them down because he said, well, if you're not getting 10%, he was such a... Anyway, he thought, oh, I've got this young girl here. I'm going to show her the ropes, tell her what to do. And they'd offered me 2.5%, so I turned it down.
Oh, wow.
Because I thought, I'm not going to sell out, not even to you, Fendi.
And then what happened after that?
What happened after that? I was then I was like, okay, if you're going to do wallpaper, you're going to have to go to China, get it printed, and buy thousands of rolls. And I was like, this isn't what I want to do. I came into this as an artist, and I understood also from my economics days, scarcity. If you have too much of something, the value goes down.
Yeah.
If you don't have very much of it, value stays high. You know, basic economics. Basic economics. Yeah. So I didn't want to do that. And that sort of coincided with me getting pregnant, my husband losing his job, and us moving to New York when he got a new job.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot of change.
There was a lot of change.
Was that like over the space of like a year or a couple of months? Wow.
Yes.
That is a lot.
Graduated in 2005. My son was born in 2006.
So what I'm getting from you is that when change happens, you're one of those people, like how you described in your formative years, you're like, well, just go. I've just got to go with it.
Here's my motto.
Go on.
Double or quits. Yeah. Either gets twice as good or you throw yourself doubly hard into something else and you quit the other thing.
I like that.
One door shuts, another one opens.
I'm using that. I think subconsciously I have used that.
Yeah.
But I absolutely agree with you. If it's not working, cut it, move on. But go all in when you do.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. So Debra, there you are, right? I've kind of like, what's happened in a year, I'm putting into a couple of words. Pregnant, you have a house fire.
Yes, we had a house fire. And then we also...
Where you had a lot of your work.
Yes. Well, that was actually... The house fire was just before my degree show. And in my degree show, I ended up using the charred chandeliers that I pulled out of the house in the middle of the degree show. Yeah. And I made this wallpaper that was birds flying. And I did a sound recording from Dr. Freud's garden in Hampstead of the birdsong. And on the wall in charcoal, I wrote, Dr. Freud, every time I fall asleep, I dream my house is on fire and I fly away.
And there it was. And then you flew away to New York.
Yeah.
You are a true artist, Debra, honestly. Literally, like, the picture that is being painted in my mind right now, but it's almost like when something happens, you're able to use that as kind of impetus.
Alchemy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Alchemy.
And it gives you the energy for the next thing. Instead of kind of being stuck in why did that happen? Like, I've just done, like, also, I think, you know, being so wedded to what you're doing, right? Being completely free to be able to go, I mean, that's your work, that's your art, you've poured your heart and soul in it. It takes time to create. And then a house fire happens, all these things kind of happen in a row. A lot of the times you can be like, oh my God, what is life doing to me? Maybe I should just stop right now or something. But you just took that energy and went, okay, my husband's got a job in New York. Let's go there. And
I've got a baby.
I've got a baby in one arm.
Join a baby group.
Not knowing where you're going to take your career with this, right?
Took a couple of my art bags that I'd made at St. Martin's with me.
So you'd made the art bags.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, so
I made the art bags right at the beginning of St.
these are
Martin's.
the resin art bags. So when you actually have a look at Debra Franses' art bag, you'll understand what it is, and we'll show a little one actually at the end. But so you actually made the original art bag when you were at Central St. Martin's.
Yes. Yeah. The first one was made of plaster, and I put pins in the handle and a little wedding invitation, and it said to have and to hold.
And then you...
Because I told you, we always used to fight.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not fisticuffs, but, you know, just like mentally, like butting against each other a lot, which was very good for spurring me on. I don't think it was so good for him. because I think he needed more of a nurturing kind of partner. Yeah, he hasn't met anyone else.
Okay.
Yeah, he's getting comfortable now again. It's taken him a long time.
So, so there you were. Moving on. So there you were of baby in one arm, right?
You have
Art
to take
bag in the other.
Yeah, you have to take your most prized possessions when you go somewhere.
Yeah.
When you've lost everything in a fire, and you just take a few things out of there. You have that thing. If you had a house fire, what would you go in and grab? And you say, some photos, maybe my baby album, maybe my kid's first shoe, maybe my face cream, or my mascara, whatever it is. It's like we all know what we need to put in our bag.
And yours was baby.
Yeah.
Good one on that one.
Yeah.
And then your art bag.
Yeah. But my art bag became a metaphor for what objects do we have that define who we are.
Oh, wow. That brings even more kind of meaning to when I see your art bag.
Pathos.
When you see the different elements and So you took your art bag, you took obviously your baby, and you went to New York.
Yeah.
And okay, you've landed in New York, and New York, the buzz of New York, it's electric in New York. But when you've just landed there as an artist, kind of a young, newly kind of on the scene artist, already done all this great work, but in its kind of very kind of creative but new stage, and you're like, now I've got to start again.
I didn't even see it as starting again, because I'm just like a ball of energy.
You just see everything as
I just roll with it. Yeah. And I'd already lined up a couple of magazine articles that was talking about Couturiers and the wallpaper. And so I was just me, and I was already being me. I do remember somebody at art school said to me, you just have a confidence about you. You just ooze this confidence and this charisma, and you don't seem to worry. And I didn't. Why? Why would you worry? Nothing really bad had happened to me until 10 years later, when I was struck down with breast cancer. And that was like a meteorite hitting me. Nothing had stopped me until that point. Can we scroll back a bit?
No, I don't want to scroll back. We will scroll back in a minute. But just because that's such a poignant point. And, when you say that you've been going through life and, for some people, losing their job, leaving a career that was kind of budding, or a house fire, they would see that as that's a major thing, right? But for you were like, okay, that just makes me go in this direction, and I will keep going with the same energy and force that I've been going in, but maybe my direction has changed. But when you got hit with something like cancer, something as kind of like it's physically affecting you, it's not on the outside, it's not your house, it's not something else, it's you. How did you first take that news?
Well, my first thought was of my son. I was like, I am not going to leave my son, age 3.5, without a mother. That's just not an option. Yeah. And I just had a very positive attitude. I remember my girlfriends got together the night before I was having the big operation, and we had, sorry if you're going to cringe out there, a breast off party. We all got together and we celebrated. Let's get this little cancerous bugger off my body and move on. And
breast off party.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we've had divorce parties, we've had birthday parties.
Any excuse for a party.
Yes.
And so, go on. Sorry. So you had a breast off party.
Yeah. Went in, had the breast off. And I remember my amazing surgeon said, I'm going to give you a belt and braces solution here. You are going to be fine. Because there was a lot of it, but he got it all. And I think there was some that had gone into my lymph nodes. So I then set about having this very strong chemo and radiotherapy. I didn't even lose my hair because I had the cold cap. And so I kind of I was breezing through it. But it did affect me. It really did. It affected part of my confidence. But that was the first time that something had really
shook you.
Yeah. And instead of going forwards, I started working backwards. I was like, okay, so what's my legacy going to be? Yeah. And that's how I've dealt with it. It's like, okay, so everything is about, what am I going to leave here? What seeds can I plant whilst I'm here? And yeah.
And so when you went through that feeling in your soul was, rather than kind of thinking, were you thinking of worst case scenarios, or were you keeping quite positive?
I was very positive.
You were very positive.
Yeah, I was very positive. And people commended me for being so positive. I was not I need sympathy kind of person at all. No.
I don't think that's kind of part of your makeup.
No.
And so you started thinking about your legacy.
Yeah.
And
I met a wonderful woman.
Yeah.
I went to the Bristol Cancer Centre. My mum took me there.
Yeah.
And I met, it was known as the Penny Bronze Centre. And I met Pat Pilkington, who was from the Pilkington Glass dynasty. And her pastor husband had set up this healing centre, which is a massive place, and it's beautiful. And the Moonwalk in Hyde Park raises money for that. That's the biggest funder. And the place itself was like a sort of 5-star spa for people with cancer, who some of them would be dead in 2 months, some of them wouldn't die. So at whatever stage you were, you would go there. You didn't have to pay to be there because it was all charity, but you could pay what you could afford. And I met a whole host of different people. Really, really interesting, and made some lovely friends. We laughed, we cried, and we did lots and lots of healing. But most of my healing was done in the art room. And most of my healing was done in the art room with other people around me, being inspired by the energy that was going on. And Pat Pilkington picked up this vibe, and in one of her wonderful evenings where we all sat around and listened to her words of wisdom, she sort of turned to me and she said, I've seen you with your art. You must go and teach the children what you know.
Wow.
And
that's
voila,
how you started
Mini Monets. Yes.
So that's how you started.
Alchemy.
Absolutely.
And I have to say, those children have and still do give me so much joy and so much life force and so much playfulness.
So for anyone who doesn't know what Mini Monets is, just explain to me, what is Mini Monets?
It's a little art school for kids aged 5 to 15, and it runs at the weekend, always run at the weekend, just because I think school time and other activities and weekend is when you've actually got some time to process what's gone on in the week. So it's a little bit therapeutic, but we look at really big artists.
Yeah.
We do amazing projects. This weekend we just did Barry Flanagan's hairs, and I was teaching them how to make wire armatures and then mod rock around it and put them into these bunny.
I follow you on Instagram,
Oh,
on every single platform, but on Mini Monets, the art that is coming out of those children is
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Amazing.
Isn't it?
And I can see that even though Artbag has completely, taken off, and I'll speak about Artbag in a minute, it's almost like Mini Monets is this kind of, when you say this exchange of, I'm able to give something and I get so much back.
Yeah. And it just comes from such a good place.
Absolutely. And tell me that little bit of the exchange. You explained something.
The India project.
Yes. So just going back a little bit of...
When I was at art school,
yeah,
one of the projects I did is I went to India, and I took a suitcase with me of gifts that were given to me by people in the UK. I had my first retrospective when I was at St Martin's in my flat in Hampstead, and I invited people. I flyered the local people, put little fill stickers on lampposts, inviting people to come to an art show in my home of a retrospective of my work, which was, it was a bit of intellectual conceit, really, to be honest, because, you know, I wasn't really anyone yet, but I felt like I was. So we did that, and I invited people to bring an object with them that they would give to somebody, to a stranger. And it was called the Giving and Receiving Project. And I put a big Union Jack up on the wall, and we took photographs of each person with the object that they were donating that was going to go in my suitcase that I was going to take to India and go and find people to accept these gifts. So then when I was in India, I would go into a village and I would put my suitcase down, open up my Union Jack and show all these gifts. And they were really, they weren't of any great value, but they were sentimental. So the interesting thing was that when the person picked the gift, it had something to do with their own aesthetic. Whether they understood what the object actually was, or they had a different use for it because they're from a different culture, that was the interesting bit for me. And I just love the idea of giving and receiving without the money. I think I made a reference to that earlier, Papua New Guinea and the Poltak.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's a fabulous book called The Art of the Gift. And that's something that that runs through. I mean, my boyfriend jokes, he says, how you get away with the things you get away with, I don't know. And it's just that sort of...
It's that exchange, though.
Yeah.
And I think when you talk about it in that respect, there is this, when they say the joy of giving is more than the receiving, is that you've actually taken that and used it in your art. And then when you've opened Mini Monets, you know, there's been an exchange of, okay, there is, we're learning different artists with these children, but also at that time, as your soul needed nourishing, there was so much coming back to you that probably the children didn't even realize, but it was something that you needed at that time.
Yeah, big time.
And so whilst you were doing that, okay, there's Debra that's still always got this little commercial, like, what do I want to do next? Like you say, you walk into a room and you're not going, oh, can I do that? You just go with it. So Artbag, which has literally blown up. I mean, every time I'm on Instagram, you're in Dubai, in New York, you're showcasing all over the world and all over UK. Tell us a little bit about Artbag.
Yeah, I mean, I say that the bag itself is like my canvas. So like an artist will have a canvas. My canvas is my resin handbag, which you can see through. And I pick objects that I find or other people have suggested, and I put them together, and they create this kind of like little chaotic scenario inside the bag. And it can be representative of a moment, a feeling, a vibe. And that's kind of what it is. And I'm currently I made one for my dad for his 80th birthday, and he supplied me with a lot of items to go in it. And there was a gun. I often put guns in because it's about mortality. Yeah. Yeah. And then he also had some timepieces and glasses and tropes from his life as a bullfighter. He was a bullfighter.
Your dad was a bullfighter?
My dad was a bullfighter.
That's another podcast in itself. But
so... I got lost. But I'm doing one for my mum. It's her 80th birthday. So my dad told me what he wanted in his, and he handed me these things. And he said, I want it to be called If I Only Had More Time.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yes, yeah. But I was like, you bastard. That's really sad. That made me cry. Yeah. Yeah, they're very emotional because I always think an object holds a memory. And as we get older, you know, we got a photograph, but an object can actually bring you back to a certain place and a vibration in your soul that like lifts you. Like, I have to just plug this right now. My boyfriend set up a company called The Guitarist, and these are made of guitar strings, and the strings on this were Chris Martin's.
Oh, wow.
From Coldplay. So I've got a bit of his DNA on me. And it's full of the memory of when I was in the concert, like dancing away with my like illuminated wristband and loving life.
And you're kind of, with your bags, it's kind of encapsulating those memories. And almost like, I mean, I know you get commissioned from brands to individuals, and you encapsulate almost like a whole feeling, being, time period in that one bag.
Yeah.
I mean, it is quite
it's like
phenomenal.
a selfie.
It is quite phenomenal. You have to check it out. Artbag. Debra.
Yes.
This has been, I feel like we've had a whistle tops tour. I could talk all evening to you, as I have done in the past. But as a closing tradition,
oh no,
I wanted
You're going to put me on the spot, aren't you?
I was about to say we have a closing tradition, but this is the first one. So we're going to make it a tradition, which is, I mean, first of all, I just want to actually go through that. What I've really got from this conversation is this kind of unwavering, just running in a direction and not thinking about where does this need to go? What is the outcome going to be? And when you need to flex and move, you flex and move. You don't kind of stop and go, oh gosh, now I've wasted a bit of time. Now, you know, am I a bit too kind of like, should I be starting a course when I'm in my early 30s? It's almost like those questions do not even arise. And I think it's something that there's an almost innocence and naivety, which is so beautiful that sometimes you kind of lose because you get so layered with conforming to what you think life should look like. So I think there's one thing that I've learned later on, but I think that, you know, some of our viewers, if you want a massive takeaway, is like sometimes you don't need to have all the answers. And it's all in this kind of periodic way that something's going to happen. But just pouring your heart and soul into something and just letting it flow is the most beautiful and artistic way for life to kind of present itself. So as a closing tradition, I have a question for you.
Good evening.
Oh, wow. As a closing tradition, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
And it is to give a gift of hindsight and experience to our listeners. What a beautiful thing hindsight and experience is. You realise as you get older, the reason why you get paid more for experience is because it really does count for something, kind of having lived through things. So what would you say what would be the advice that you would give your younger self?
I've got two things that I like to three things actually. Yeah. First one is good decisions make themselves. Yeah. How many times have we tried to do something and it's just not working?
Mm.
Yeah. So don't ignore that when it's not working. A good decision would be to leave it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Something that I got from my grandpa, your first loss is your least loss.
Oh, wow.
So
That's
whatever
true.
time you've spent doing something, the moment you realise it's not going anywhere, leave it.
Mm.
Don't keep banging on and doing it.
And your third one?
And my third one is something that I got from Jefford Horrigan, my favourite tutor at St Martin's. And he said, do what you do and do it well, and your audience will find you.
Oh, I love that. What a note to finish on. Thank you so much, Debra. I've been captivated.
It's been a pleasure. I've loved it. Thank you.
Thanks, Debra.